Hello, I want to share with you today Fiona's story. Fiona is a client of mine who was walking the fifth chakra path and had the fifth chakra energy code. This story fully illuminates how it is when we get caught up in the imbalanced, dysfunctional expression of trapped emotional energy and unaddressed mental patterns that arise as a consequence of trauma. During this storyline, you will see that I use my light method, Life Guides Integrated Transformative Experience, which is really simple yet extremely potent in a way that can talk to the subconscious mind body and fully illuminate imbalanced illusions and misperceptions that were created at a time of trauma, but are still believed and still creating through the back door the things that we don't want. And also, it illuminates and releases trapped emotional energy that sits stuck in our chakra system until we come with awareness and compassion and breath to really start to release it. So I hope that you enjoy this story. And if it isn't your path or your energetic code, or it doesn't resonate for you as something that you struggle with, you may recognize someone that you know or someone that you love that may be struggling with similar issues and challenges. And I encourage you, if that's the case, to pass this video along to those people so that they can see and maybe gain some faith or some hope that there can be resolution and positive choices that can be made to relieve suffering from this energetic code. I hope that you enjoy. Namaste. Thank you. Fiona's fifth chakra journey on the light blue path of freedom of expression. Fiona was constantly struggling to find the balance between being overly controlling and being overly surrendered to the point of passivity. She'd recently been given the diagnosis of throat polyps that were precancerous, and she wanted to get to the root of the problem. She had opened up to alternate options since the path of conventional medicine had run her into the dead end of the doctors believing there was nothing more they could do to help her in understanding how this could be related to her spiritual and emotional health. Her research into the alternative options had led her to my door. She arrived in a distressed state, dismayed by the possibility that she may actually be causing or contributing to the cause of her problem herself. She'd read some books that talked about taking personal responsibility for our health and discovered that there may be some responsibility or choices that she was making, either consciously or unconsciously, that may be contributing to her condition. This information seemed to throw her further off balance and contributed to her plummeting into a contracted, stagnant, fearful state about her future health. I just want to say here that a real benefit of expanding into our personal responsibility for our health is to be empowered into knowing how to master our mind and our emotions. Fiona is a hard-working, moderately successful mother of 2 grown sons who owns her own retail business. She devotes herself to her work and her family, yet found herself in a marriage that she felt had run its course and lost all its passion, and a job that was fulfilling someone else's dream and not her own. She did not know at this point what her dream was. She felt that she was living a lie somehow, living someone else's life, someone she was supposed to be, not truly herself. She was feeling alienated and disconnected from herself. She was bored and wanted some excitement in her life. She had met a man that she was attracted to who had visited her store looking for a gift for his girlfriend. She'd been thinking about him a lot and discovered he had recently broken up with his girlfriend, and so she started to pursue him. Her commitment to spicing up her life had become the priority, and she was not acting correctly. She had thoroughly justified her behavior by victimizing herself to the degree that she felt she might as well have a good time now, since she probably didn't have that much time left anyway. Fiona was on a spiritual path and interested in participating in her practices, but she was not really clearly looking at herself and how she may be doing things and making choices that led her into this ethical problem, causing her to dislike and then disconnect from herself. We very often find ways to justify our unethical choices to avoid the full responsibility it requires to make right and appropriate choices, which very often means not having the immediate gratification of the thing we want. We forget the inevitable truth that every choice has a cost and a benefit. If we focus on the benefit in the short term without weighing the cost in the long term, we will set ourselves up for difficulty later. We often fall into a convenient but unwise and costly slumber that at some point we need to be awakened from. We also enter into the mysterious territory of self-punishment and find many excessive and diabolical punishments for ourselves that very often outweigh the crime. These punishments very often take the form of self-defeating and sabotaging behaviors that act against the intentions we set for ourselves. Our happiness resides in our ability to make choices and take actions that are consistent with our values. And anytime we take actions opposed to that is depleting our potential for happiness. Fiona had struggled with her relationship with her mother all her life. She had been narcissistic and controlling all her life. This had pushed her to leaving her native Norway at the age of 17. She had never really confronted and resolved the effects of that relationship, nor had she really examined or dismantled the personality structure that she developed in order to survive her childhood. During the course of her formative years, she had created a false, pleasing, accommodating personality style that her mother approved of that allowed her to get her needs met at the cost of her connection to her own authenticity. After she arrived in the United States, she felt liberated from the constriction of her mother constantly getting her own needs met from the relationship, only to bump up against the opposite, equally debilitating possibility of manipulating men into getting her pseudo needs met, a choice that led to the feeding of her own false self at the continued expense of her authenticity. After a decade of playing with this new possibility, she married the man that she could most successfully manipulate, who fell in love with her or in authentic, pleasing ways. This contributed to her demise as it further disconnected her from her own authenticity and pushed her into a state of imbalance that, if left unaddressed, gave little or no possibility of fixing. It also established her polarized response to survival, which was to swing between being overly controlling to overly submissive. Her control expressed itself in submerged manipulation, and her passivity expressed itself in her willingness to give away her power in major life decisions so that she agreed ultimately to a life that she didn't want. This agreement to be silenced in her expression of what she truly wanted and the disconnection of her own authenticity compounded her imbalance to the point of creating this physical imbalance. The imbalance had most likely existed on an emotional level from childhood and beyond into past lives. Fiona had expressed through our sessions that she often felt silenced. Either something would arise externally in her circumstances that convinced her it wasn't safe for her to talk freely, or something would rise up from within her that convinced her it wasn't safe for her to express herself and talk authentically about what she wanted. She really didn't feel like she even knew who she really was or what she really wanted. She had spent most of her life pleasing others and really ignoring her own voice, until she arrived at the place where she didn't even know who she really was and what she really wanted or needed to be herself, to be happy. Talking to her subconscious revealed the following internal dialogue. The thing that isn't working in my life is my health, followed by silence. And the reason why is I really can't say. And the reason why is I'm not well. I'm not balanced. Silence. I'm not clear. I don't even know who I am or what I want. Crying. I invited Fiona to breathe into the spot that was most uncomfortable and put her hand on it. She slowly raised her hand to her throat. I instructed her to gently pant and bring all her awareness into this area so that she could fully feel it. Tears silently fell until there was no more discomfort, and there were no more tears. She felt immense relief, as if some great weight had been lifted. I asked her how she felt, and she said lighter, free somehow. I knew that we weren't finished yet and invited her to continue with the discovery process to find out what else was there. And then I asked her what she was afraid of. The thing I'm most afraid of is disappearing into nothing. And the reason I'll disappear into nothing is I'm really not showing up. And the reason I'm not showing up is I'm afraid of doing something wrong. So it's better not to show up at all. And the reason is so you're not to blame for messing things up. And the reason is don't want to be set up to fail, so I don't speak. And the reason is it's not safe to talk. It's not safe to show up, or you'll be blamed. Better to say nothing. In fully illuminating this in a dialogue, Fiona was able to see the amount of force she was using to push back her own expression of herself. Her spirit wanted her to push forth her authentic expression of the truth of herself, and her human self, her personality, the false self that was created to protect her in childhood, was now acting destructively. Could not, would not, and pushed back against her desire to express, thus creating a mass of energy in her throat. We had more sessions to build a deep connection to the voice of Fiona's authentic self, and she found that her real interest lay in illustrating children's books. She'd always been interested in art, but her mother felt that her work was not good enough to support her financially. She pushed back her own expression, her own truth on every level of her life, and it was going to take time to reconnect Fiona to herself, to her gifts, and to her ability to express herself. She really felt now that she knew her work and her path, and that was enough for her to get re-inspired about her future and her life. She ended her unethical relationship and decided it was time for her to be with herself for the first time and honor who she really is. She felt that when the time was right, the right man would come along. She continued to work with the fifth chakra toolkit, and her health continues to improve. As you rebalance this chakra, you naturally reclaim your motivation towards your creative expression. You can expect to feel inspired to create, to write, or draw, or sing, or whatever is in your heart. The ability to correctly express yourself will naturally be present as you find your voice and feel strong and capable of speaking up for yourself and advocating for your deeper needs.